Greetings, acolytes, and welcome back to the archives. I've been expecting you. Darth Vader is the most imposing and tyrannical figures to have ever terrored the galaxy, building himself up through fire from the black glass plains of Mustafar. Darth Vader single-handedly became the right-hand man of the Emperor, attaining 8% of the Emperor's power. Darth Vader was a force of nature, forged through decades of self-actualization, training, and combat. Decades of manipulation by Palpatine, all culminated in the perfect apprentice. But all that was stripped away from Palpatine when Anakin fell to Obi-Wan Kenobi on Mustafar, falling on the black glass sands of the planet. Darth Vader succumbed to the fire, with the fire licking up from the molten rivers of Mustafar, catching in his robes alight, ultimately ending and importing psychological damage onto the fallen Chosen One. Anakin would then be entombed within a suit of black armor encased in obsidian. Anakin would never be the same. His burns would torment him for the rest of his life. Although periods in his Bacta tank did help aid his wounds, Darth Vader would never be able to live as a true human did. Even if he attempted to rebel against Sidious, there was no way Anakin could simply mold himself back into society. However, there was an instance where Palpatine, in all his generosity, offered Darth Vader a chance to upgrade his suit, with him offering the fact that it could very well be made of more expensive and more luxurious materials, allowing Vader to be quicker, faster, stronger, and more agile in his movements and in lightsaber combat. But why is this? Palpatine made Vader's suit what it is, an agonizing shell of imprisonment that allowed him to fuel his dark side power. Darth Vader fed off the rage and most purely the absolute agony that he felt from his suit, the bulky suit of armor. Vader could barely reach his hands and his lightsaber above his head in order to strike overhand blows against his opponents. Nevertheless, he became an absolute monster. So why did Palpatine go to all the effort in order to create a bulky suit of armor that Vader very well could have died in and fed on the dark side from, and then offer him a new one years later? Let us go through the context of the situation. This actually takes place during the time that Luke Skywalker destroyed the first Death Star. Skywalker, who was previously earlier that year a mere farm boy, had recently destroyed the Death Star with a proton torpedo. This proton torpedo had absolutely decimated the battle station the Empire had spent upwards of 2 decades working to complete. Palpatine, as you can imagine, was absolutely furious, and although Grand Moff Tarkin, the chief executive designer of this Death Star, was dead, Palpatine still had one more trick and one more person to take his rage out on, that being his own apprentice. After Palpatine had imported his dark side fury onto Vader, purely expressing his absolute loathing and absolute fury for Vader after the Death Star was exploded, for Vader not being fast enough in order to stop Luke Skywalker, and being overthrown and outmatched by Han Solo and the Wookiee Chewbacca, Sidious offered Vader a chance to upgrade his suit. You might think that Vader took this eagerly, as we know Vader was an intimidating and powerful opponent even within his suit. He stated explicitly that pain made the dark side stronger, and what more pain could you get if you're in a bulky suit of armor, surrounded by uncomfortable, brutal wounds? Darth Vader's burns on Mustafar certainly augmented his own strength in the dark side, and as an already imposing figure that could match Obi-Wan Kenobi as of the Battle of Yavin, he was exceptionally powerful, even encased within his ebon armor. However, Darth Vader instead refused, after a while of pondering and the implications of this. Why is this though? Why would Darth Vader not take the chance? Palpatine has explicitly stated he would make it out of more expensive and more luxurious metals, so it would be more comfortable. So while Vader would still feel the pain, and Palpatine would still have the satisfaction, knowing that his apprentice was learning his lesson every single agonizing moment from Mustafar, it would be at least somewhat comfortable. He would be faster, stronger, more agile, using a lightsaber faster than even the greatest swordsman of the Old Republic era, being able to batter down enemies. He would become so unfathomably powerful. But why did Sidious do this? Palpatine, as we know, is always threatened by a threat to his power, and he knows that he would have to build in more inhibitors to inhibit the fact that if Vader ever attempted to betray him, he would have to use Force Lightning, something that is shown to override and discount Vader's own life support cybernetics and cybernetic enhancements as well as plates. Why did Vader refuse this suit? To be honest, the pure blunt answer is the fact that Darth Vader was afraid of this. I know, that's a bold statement. Darth Vader was barely scared of anything, if anything. One of the few things he was scared of was his son Luke, as he was terrified of the confliction he felt and that it might pull him away from the dark side and his devotion to it. In his mind, the dark side and Palpatine were all he had left, but all this was stripped away when he learned that he had a son. Vader was terrified of upgrading his suit for the main reason that he might not survive. When Palpatine had pitched this idea to him initially, Darth Vader had been ready to accept. However, Palpatine had gone on to state that he did not want to kill his apprentice, at least not yet, as all is deception with Lord Sidious. But Vader was outright terrified, because, due to the fact that we know a Vader's suit was incredibly bulky and uncomfortable, it not only strengthened his sensitivity and connection to the dark side, but it also would have been extremely not only painful, but also dangerous. Palpatine wanted a new apprentice, an apprentice who was stronger, but every single being that he thought was a worthy candidate, such as Starkiller, would be defeated by Vader or would be killed before they could be forged into a vessel of supreme power. Darth Vader was all he had, so he had to make him the best that he could be. After Luke Skywalker destroyed the Death Star, this was the Palpatine's golden chance, and he pitched this idea. Vader said no purely for the reason that if the cybernetic operation and implantation were to go foul and awry, that he would be in dire need of aid. Darth Vader, as we know, can only have his respirator active for a few minutes. And if his respirator is deactivated at all, he can only live a few minutes without oxygen, and then he will simply crush and fall before him. Darth Vader, without his suit, would be in an incredibly vulnerable position. He was not only superstitious of his master, but perhaps using this as an idea to betray him. He saw the absolute heightened ideas and possibilities of having his suit upgraded, but at the same time, it would be a painstakingly slow process. And if the droids were unable to fit the cybernetics onto him fast enough, Vader would not survive. And that was a risk not even the Dark Lord of the Sith was willing to take. Well, my acolytes, what did you think of this video? Personally, Darth Vader is one of my favourite characters in all of the lore. As a true brutal tyrant of the dark side, he is perhaps second only to Darth Malgus in the history of Star Wars lore in terms of my favourite acolytes of the dark side. So, my friends, I'll see you in the galaxy far, far away. Keep your wits about you, and remember, the Force will be with you, no matter how agonising and dark the path ahead of you may seem.